So the following conversation is between me, Jesse McCarthy with MontessoriEducation.com, and Simone Davies of the MontessoriNotebook.com. Simone and I sat down one Saturday morning over Skype and just asked each other a few challenging questions around teaching and parenting, what we thought of as kind of gray areas in Montessori. Now, in this third clip, and there are 5 in total, we talk about tests and testing. Definitely a touchy topic at times.
School. And I had to be really careful as well because they started to complain about tests in high school. Yeah. You know, there's a lot of testing that goes on, and they used to like no testing because the Montessori teachers know where they're up to, so they don't need to test. And I was kind of like, yeah, silly schools, all this testing. And then you're like, oh, actually, how can you use this in a more positive way? And I was kind of questioning them like, oh, I wonder how tests can be used like usefully. Like, so I guess if you don't know, and tests are actually quite fun if you get 10 out of 10 because they just show you they know everything, right? So you could do it that way. Or tests can be a great way to show you what you haven't mastered yet and how are you going to master the last 10%. And so I started changing the way I was talking about the things that I wasn't necessarily 100% in agreement with.
Yeah, and I think that style, that's giving respect to the child that he can form his own opinions throughout life, which I think is huge. And interestingly, you raised tests. It's funny because I was in traditional schooling and I used to have these long tests, but they weren't multiple choice. They were like really thoughtful. You have to fill in. And children, there would be stress about it, which I think was problematic. Like we were setting them up for this big day when you're going to take the test. But you'd be amazed at how many kids were so excited to share their knowledge on these tests. Because this wasn't like boring history. You fill in A, B, C, D. This was exciting. Like I get to explain how Rome fell. Like it's so I think as Montessorians or just people in this kind of no testing idea, it's really important to think about what do kids actually enjoy in sharing what they know and how can we do more of that? Not necessarily testing and going, oh, you're an A student now and you're a B and the rest of your life is ruined because you don't have this 4.0. It's more, but really thinking about, are we giving them time to share what they know? Are we setting aside time for that? Because there are some values in testing. It's just not in the traditional sense of it. I'm curious what your thought. I know you work with toddlers, but as kids get older, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, we do have the 3-period lesson, right, in Montessori. Yeah. And in so quickly for people who don't know it, it's like if you are teaching them colors or if you're teaching them some language, first you name them. The second period is playing games, so that, they're starting to try these things out. And then the third is when they actually really know the concept, then you say, oh, what is this called? And then they're really excited to say, that's the blue or that's the shark. And, so they can they really love the mastery of the 3rd period lesson. In the under 3s, the toddlers age group, which I work with, we often don't get to the 3rd period lesson unless you know that child knows it very well, because they're often not articulate enough. And if they say that's they're holding up the humpback whale and they call it a shark, the only thing you can say is, no, that's like the wrong thing. So I would always say, oh, you're showing me the humpback whale. So I think that there is value in showing what they know. And I think sometimes we skip over it because we don't want to test them. But I do see a lot of testing going on with young children when we say, oh, look, what color is this? And what color is that? Or do you know the name of that? What does the doggy say? And so I think I don't want to say, please test your child, because I'm worried that quizzing kind of stuff that comes out, it's not that useful. That's not how children are going to learn. They're better off you saying every time you want to say, what color is this? Just tell them, oh, this is blue. That would be a more productive way.
I'm happy you raised that, because that is like, I would say, like 95% plus of parents, and most of these parents are so loving and caring, but there's this constant like, oh, what color is that? What's 2 + 2? It's like nonstop. So what do you think is going on there? I know we haven't been thinking about this, but what's going on? What do you think?
I think that we just want to see our child being successful or something like this. It's almost like, show Nanny and Poppy how you can clap now. We're almost performing, or we're worried that they're not going to learn it. So this is the way that we think they're going to learn. I feel it's a little bit pushy. It's very much top down, which is different to the Montessori approach. Anyway, I'm just conscious of it, and maybe I don't feel bad if you do it, because I know that definitely.
And this show, if you listen to the podcast here, this is not at all about guilting parents that are doing this, because as I just said, 95% of parents are doing this, so guilt the whole world here, basically. But I'm asking it more of like, so I think you pointed out 2 things. One is maybe watch out for wanting to show off your child to others. That's one thing. And then the second thing is pedagogically, or just thinking about how children learn. Like if you're reading to them Blue, or if you're doing what Simone was doing, these kind of 3-period lessons, they're going to get it. They don't need 10,000 repetitions. Like show mommy 2 + 2, show daddy 2 + 2. Like if you teach it to them, if you show it to them in a certain way, they'll absorb it. It's kind of like a language. Like you don't really sit down and go, this is how you say and, they get it. Anyways, I find that so prevalent and all over that it's just, and it's so difficult to get out of even when you know you shouldn't be doing it. It's almost like this natural thing.